Hey everybody.
Hey.
For those of you that we have not met, welcome to our channel. I am Tony.
And I am Lane.
And we are PattyCake Productions. So if you're here, you probably like what you've seen on our channel, and we are the writers, directors, producers, composers, lyricists, everything that you see on our channel we create. From the costumes all the way to all of the editing and the special effects. It's just the two of us for the most part.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
We do it because we love it though. But what we thought would be fun was to revisit some of our favorite projects and offer you some insight as to how we created them and how we shot them and what some of the inspiration was for some musical moments of some of these videos. So,
and maybe a few funny antics here and there. So
more than a few.
Yeah, seriously.
Okay, so the first one we're going to do, it is a week before Halloween. So we're going to first react to one of my all-time favorite videos that we've ever worked on, Bump in the Night. When we concepted the video and the song, we wanted it to feel nostalgic. Lane and I are both children of the 80s, so we grew up with these films and these
films gave us nightmares
for sure
when we were kids.
And there's so many really good ones, and I feel like nowadays, God, I'm officially that age where it's like back in my day. But
it's true.
We felt like we wanted to do kind of this big like cattle call of all of these like really kind of iconic and really like ubiquitous Halloween like characters and put them all. We both obviously really like Thriller, so we wanted to sort of do something that felt like a nod to Thriller. When we gave Lindsay Galvin Todd, our choreographer, the note for the dance break in this, we told her, we're like, I want Thriller, but I don't want Thriller. So it was supposed to vibe. The whole thing is supposed to like vibe Thriller, especially with the two kind of characters that are like walking home. That's the premise of Thriller, but we wanted to sort of update it and make it a little more family friendly, I guess, a little more accessible to like mainstream audiences. As far as the song goes, whenever we start a songwriting project, we typically will pick like a genre that we want to do. For instance, like for this one, I remember distinctly we said like, oh, I want to make this feel like if we were to go to a celebrity to like sing this song, who would it be? And we both sort of said Dua Lipa. We both are kind of like really big fans, so we said, okay, let's give this that kind of vibe. She's really good at that kind of like nostalgic-y throwback, kind of the late 70s to the early 80s. And so that's the world that we wanted to play in, especially a lot of this imagery. A lot of these characters are characters from the 70s, 80s, and the 90s, so it felt like the right tone musically to play with too. Okay, so we're gonna jump right in. The video opens on this couple, Brad and Janet. For those of you that don't know, that's the
Say what you will about old movies. This
Rocky
one
Horror
still
Picture
freaks
Show.
me out.
So they're watching
Seriously,
Nosferatu,
it's
which
giving
is
nightmares.
what most people would consider the first kind of like
Looks
horror
like your sister's
movie.
braver than both of us were.
That wasn't scary.
Yeah.
Nothing scares her.
This is Ben Brainerd, who
Maybe don't have
is
the Wi-Fi.
one of the coolest, funniest, easiest people to work with.
Here in Salem, Massachusetts.
Just pause for a second.
And we had cast him in Descendants, our Descendants project, as Carlos, and he was sort of like recommended. I sort of remember.
Oh, we put out a post on Instagram. We were like, what are the chances we're going to actually find someone that looks like Carlos? And we put the message out, and like several people tagged him in the post.
Do you remember the one comment? If you don't cast Ben Brainerd as Carlos, I'm gonna riot. I distinctly remember that.
Who is this guy? We clicked on him, and we went, and Tony was like,
Holy
Lane,
shit.
look.
And he just like,
And I was just like, perfect.
and like Ben, like he is just like, he's the sweetest, funniest, like he's really sarcastic. He's very quick-witted.
It's almost like he's a comedian.
It's almost like he's a stand-up comedian. Yeah, it's weird.
don't know.
But you can't tell, like, if he were to tell you, like, I'm 13 years old or I'm, like, 28, like, I would believe kind of anything. Like, he's very, like, ageless. So it's just, like, I can't tell if Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I thought he was exactly who we wanted when we like were concepting this project. I was like, it's got to be Ben. That is the kind of big brother figure.
We messaged him. We were like, hey, what are the chances you'd be interested in playing Carlos in our Descendants video? And he was like, sure.
He's like, yeah.
Like within 5 minutes, he was casted. And he actually lived at that moment here in Orlando, which is where we live. So it was very fortuitous. All right, let's go.
What you're seeing here is her name is Hannah Laird. So we like to do this in a lot of our videos, is we like to put little like Easter eggs in. So Hannah Laird is just one of the most amazing vocalists like we have ever worked with. She is incredible what she's able to do with her voice, especially like mimicking. She has a beautiful singing voice. I did a show at Disney called Finding Nemo the Musical, and she was Nemo at the time. And the fact how much she could sound like a little boy, it would just astounded me, where you like watch her and you listen to her and you go like, you completely have this suspension of disbelief that she's a grown woman. She's just such a brilliant vocalist and a brilliant actor. So she actually does a lot of the princess voices, the singing voices for the princesses.
So many.
Like a lot of them. She probably wouldn't want us to say how many of them she does, but she does a lot of them. And she is just an incredible vocalist. So she was in doing something else for us in the studio. I don't remember what. And we said, hey, do you want to make a cameo as the reporter?
What was her name?
Nev Prescott.
That's right.
Because and for those of you that are not horror fans, I mean, I don't feel like it's particularly like subtle. But Nev Campbell and Sydney Prescott. Nev Campbell plays Sydney Prescott, and so we just kind of combine the names, and it's just like another little
throw to horror.
A little throw to nostalgia. And like I said, Brad and Janet are Ben Brainerd and his girlfriend, and that's obviously a reference to Rocky Horror Picture Show, for those of you that don't know.
All right.
First time ever, the streets are empty. Per the governor's orders, no trick-or-treating, no Halloween parties, no haunted houses, nothing.
Yeah.
It's safe to say, it's dead out here.
This is the worst Halloween ever. I love trick-or-treating.
Right?
Aren't you a little old to go trick-or-treating?
You're never too old for Halloween. Besides, free candy.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. You're never too old for Halloween.
Culturally insensitive counts is a boomer
I was trick-or-treating until I was
not
25.
mine.
I'm still
And don't get me
trick-or-treating, just
started on
full
slashing
disclosure.
business from dumb blonde. It's
It got real weird, though.
oversexualized in a male-dominated industry. No wonder we don't have a female president yet.
I don't necessarily disagree with her, and we wrote this scene, so like there was
I
definite
think it's time we go.
things that I wanted to give her to say. I always like when there's a skeptic. Like you'll see that kind of as a recurring theme in a lot of our videos and our projects. Like we typically will script in a cynic,
A naysayer, somebody that throws it completely off in order to do what we're doing in the video.
And what usually makes it work in our things, is that the skeptic has to be schooled, for lack of a better word, and like
Absolutely.
has to come around. And the setup for this is that she doesn't believe anything is scary. She doesn't think that anything that they're watching in all these horror movies, that they're just cliches and blah, 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 blah. But what she doesn't know is that she's about to be in one. And that was fun for us.
Thanks for having us over.
Ooh, you better be careful walking home. There's a full moon.
Perfect.
Yeah, and you
We
watch
can take
Stevie, the
shortcut
little
through
girl,
the
and she just has no interest in any. And he's trying so hard to get her amped for Halloween, and she's
Right.
just not here for it.
No.
Happy Halloween.
You're walking home alone at night and feel like someone's creeping up behind. Okay, so right off the top, we went with like a Michael Jackson kind of Billie Jean, like drum fill to start, because it's one of those things that's so synonymous with this period of time in music. It's the beginning. It's like a Virgin or Billie Jean. It's all of those kind of like pop, really mega pop songs had that kind of just like really straight rhythm to start. So we're like, okay, well that's a good place to start. We weren't really sure. This was one of the songs that I feel like we wrote pretty quickly. Like I said, because Lane and I are both fans of horror, and particularly of like 80s pop, like retro pop, right through the 90s, I would say. We still love pop music, but we like playing in this kind of sandbox of
80s music,
retro synth, stuff like The Weeknd does or Dua Lipa, like all those kind of like fun synths that they get to play with is fun. So we wanted to start it sort of, I remember citing like Billie Jean as the like, with that kind of mega iconic bass line, but and the first character we see, for those of you that don't know, we pulled La Hitchcock, for lack of a better word, and Freddie here is Lane. We had to cast a bazillion actors in this, and we shot it over like 2 weeks. Like it was just like, and it was like night shoots.
All night shoots, yeah.
For like 2 weeks.
And don't be confused, I am not the Freddie in the dance section.
No,
I'm
all of
actually
the
behind the camera at that moment.
I think most of the masked singers, and if I'm wrong, actors, correct me. Most of the singers that are or most of the characters that are masked are not, they're doubles for the dance break because they're all we in Orlando obviously is like a hotbed of talent. So we hired a group of just incredible dancers that doubled for the dance break. The ones that were masked, but the ones that are not were the same, if that makes sense. All right. So this is Lane making his little cameo. And he plays a couple characters in this. Oh, well, that little synth echo. Do you want to say what that is if we're talking purely about music?
Oh, sorry, I didn't even hear what you're talking about. Let's back it up.
There's like an echo.
Walking home alone at night and feel like someone's creeping up behind.
And that's a direct kind of thing that we pulled from Dua Lipa. Out of my mind, out of my mind.
Yep, definitely.
But we knew we didn't want it to be vocal, so we gave it this kind of like chimey.
It sounds a lot like what you would hear in Halloween, like
for sure.
So it's the same kind of two notes that play in that as well.
Just it's playing on the things that seem familiar but are not. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You turn around, there's no one there, and tell yourself it's only in your mind.
And this is an actor that I worked with at Universal. His name is Jason Urbanski, and he is just one of the most incredible people. Like, he is just such a good guy, and he's such a good actor. And he was a Beetlejuice. For those of you that don't know, I did the Beetlejuice show at Universal Studios for like a decade. And I played Dracula, so I got to work with all of these just like top tier actors. And when we were talking about Beetlejuice specifically, I was just like, there was like a very short list of Beetlejuices that I thought
could pull it off,
could meet the my unrealistically high standards, and Jason Urbanski was very high on that list. So he played Beetlejuice for years. He doesn't do it anymore. But when I reached out to him, I was like, hey, do you have an interest in playing Beetlejuice, like doing a little cameo? And he was just like, yes, absolutely. And he was just like, oh, man, I miss this guy. So there was a lot of that during the shoot.
And out of the night comes a shrill that sends chills down your spine.
Another brilliant actor, this is James Keaton. For those of you that don't know who James Keaton is, he does a lot of the writing with me for a lot of the dialogue episodes. He is a brilliant writer, brilliant comedian. Also he was one of the original Beetlejuices at Universal, and he actually still works there. He's also Jack the Clown. He originated that character for Halloween Horror Nights, so he is like royalty as far as people to work with. He's brilliant, he's funny, he's quick-witted, he's talent. And he played Walt Disney for us in the Disney Showman video that we did about Walt Disney. So he was another one that we were really lucky to get. And loves the Addams Family and Fester specifically, so he
wanted to be this.
He
character.
wanted to be Fester, and he's the Penguin in our Batman video, and he cast himself in that. He said, like, I'm being the Penguin, you're not casting anybody.
So
and I was like, okay, sure. And when you watch the video, you just go like, oh yeah, it's like you can't imagine anybody else. And he's nothing like Danny DeVito. He's 6 feet tall, and like there was hours of makeup to get him as the Penguin. And Fester too. It was like a bald cap and all of this foundation. It was a lot, but they were just so game for it. And we shot this in the summer, and these nights were like 95 degrees, and they were like, we had like maybe a minute to shoot each of these things before they would start to like on camera be visibly sweating, and he's like in this tweed coat. It was a lot. He was so game.
Your heartbeat starts racing, chasing you. You're out of time.
This is my neighbor Eric Dale, who played Captain America in our Avengers video. This is also Eric Dale.
All right, let's pause here because this was actually a toy that we bought that
Yeah.
was not very cheap.
No,
and,
it was like $100 or something like that. It was a lot.
and also like had this button where it would turn its head, but we couldn't get the timing right, so we had to
Rewire it.
so it would move on command. So that was something we're always kind of tinkering with toys in that fashion so that we can get things to move when we need them to move.
Yeah,
So.
we did that in the Oogie Boogie video that we did too. We had to like rewire the skeletons that are moving and because we needed them to lip sync.
And the cord wasn't very long, so Tony actually had to like duck down
Like
next to one of the skeletons, and he had this little button that controlled.
Just out of frame right here, it's the same thing. Lane is laying beneath that like hay bale, just out of camera, and we would go 1, 2, 3, and then he would engage the wire, and Chucky's head would turn. So we had to get like the timing of the camera had to land on so he would be in focus. Like this one shot was like half of an evening. Just like this
Definitely.
1 second of footage was like a substantial like
That's how these things
piece
go.
of the evening. Anyway. And Slimer. So fun fact about Slimer, this cameo right here was originally Samara from The Ring.
Yeah.
Who coincidentally, I just said Eric Dale, who plays Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers and Ghostface.
Scream,
His daughter, Kendall is her name. She is
Oh my gosh.
like a beautiful girl. Like, and she is like an amazing dancer too. And so we wanted somebody that was like, had a dancer to be able to like do that kind of Samara crawl. But we couldn't figure out, we shot it and she like nailed it, and we had to like pour water on her so she'd be like dripping. It was just like, it was gross. But we couldn't figure out how to get the like static kind of VHS thing that was
Where
just
she, like,
on her.
Where the character like jumps towards you and all of a sudden she's like really close to you. And like we worked on that special effect for
like
a good
a
amount of
while.
time, and then we were like,
And we actually, there's a cut of this that we did for our patrons, I think, that had Samara in it.
yeah, they got to see her.
And she's still in the dance break, so that was like the saving grace. It was like, okay, Samara's still in it because The Ring is such a. But we were like, okay, well, what do we put? We storyboarded all of this, so each character we knew exactly where they were going to go, how much time they were going to be there,
What exactly they needed to do for that.
So when we
2
cut
3
it,
seconds.
we were like, well, now we have a hole that I don't know how to fill, and I think it was patrons, because that's how Jack from The Shining ended up in it too. It was like they were reshoots, and Slimer got put in like after the reshoots because somebody was like, oh, why don't you have Ghostbusters? And we were like, oh, that's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Lane doing Slimer's voice. I played Dracula for a million years, and it's probably, I know it is, it's my favorite character that I've ever played. If you were to ask little 5-year-old me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would have told you without blinking, I want to be Dracula. I loved the movie, I loved the book. There was just like, it was what I wanted to be, without question. Mm-hmm. And I was probably Dracula 10 Halloweens growing up. Like, I loved him that much. So getting to play him for the company that made the movie at Universal was like a dream come true. And when they closed the show and they got rid of the Atmosphere character at Universal, I was devastated because I wasn't ready to say goodbye to him. So when we started doing this and we decided to include the classic monsters, I was just like, okay, I'll put the cape on and everything, because this was my costume. So I got to like put it on again, and it was very cool because I miss him very much. So it was a fun little way for me to give him a nice send off.
And fun little fact about this particular shot is that we shot it twice. Once actually here,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
we did another version of it that was green screen because we couldn't quite get the lighting right. So
because
we tried
we wanted
it again.
the camera to move. We wanted you can't even really see it, but that's irony. Is that we wanted the camera to follow the bat down, and then when it lands, it poofs into smoke and becomes Dracula. And we couldn't do that practically, so we shot a plate of just the camera movement with nothing in it that would follow the bat to Dracula. Mm-hmm. And we had to do that a couple times, and it ended up not looking right. So the bat, the smoke, and Dracula were all separate things that had to get composited.
Show one more time.
So lock the door, they're coming for you. Things that go bump in the night. Things that go bump in the night.
Okay. What's funny is that for those of you that don't know, me, Jeff Castellucci, and Kathy Castellucci all worked at the Monster Show together at the same time. So when we were doing this big kind of like monster reunion, we reached out to them. I was just like, "Oh, do you guys have interest in being the Bride of Frankenstein and Frankenstein again?" And they had something going on this weekend where they were like not going to be around, and it had to be this weekend because we had makeup artists and like there were so many moving pieces, and we ended up not being able to put that. I was devastated because I was like, ah.
It would have been awesome.
But Brianna here, she's been in a million things for us. Brianna Fogden, she plays
She is
Drizella, the stepsister. She's been in a million things for us, and she is again painfully beautiful, painfully professional. She's so talented, and she just shows up and just like nails it every time. And for something that's just kind of like a cameo, she just like went way down the rabbit hole of Elsa Lanchester, who played the Bride of Frankenstein, and just like the level of detail and we sort of had the conversation of the Bride of Frankenstein, you know what I mean? She hears it, and then she sees it, then she hears it, then she sees it. Like it's like a very, very bird-like, and she just like nailed it. And Frankenstein here is actually... and
Lanenstein.
The fact that Lane Stein was playing Frankenstein, I giggled about that. I still giggle about it. Maybe it's not.
Tony had to give me a lot of notes for the choreography because, as you guys know, I'm not that kind of actor. I'm more of a cinematographer.
Right.
The full moon rises high, the wind is still.
So musically, going back to something musically, that's one of my favorite moments of the song, and that was a Lane thing because it wasn't originally like that cutout where the full moon rises high, where the beat drops out for a second and then picks back up, and it's one of my favorite little like tropes of pop songs. You don't see it very much now.
It's actually kind of like a 90s
It's
thing.
super 90s. Yeah. It's not really 80s, but we blurred that line a little bit. And
since Thriller is kind of like, when did Thriller come out?
80,
like late 80s,
84. I don't know, something like that.
Close enough to the trope where we used it.
So I was just like, and we typically when we write, we go back and forth, and sometimes I'll have notes and I'll send voice memos to him. So because we're not always together writing like this, so we'll send voice memos back and forth and updated demos back and forth. And I got this back, and I remember going to the second verse, and then I was like, oh my God, I love that so much. And speaking of vocals too, there's a lot of that is not Ben Brainerd singing. He does not sing. It's me. I knew I wanted it really kind of like very pop. And a lot of people we read in the comments like, it's so much auto-tune, and we're definitely Lane and I are both singers, and we both really like auto-tune. I really like auto-tune as a tool. I don't like it when it's a necessity, but I really like what it can do, especially in pop music. I really like the way
that sounds,
the texture that it brings, and the like, especially with something as electronic as this, is so many synths that I feel like auto-tune really fits nicely in that sandbox because it is very electronic and synths are very electronic. So when you put them together, it feels really nice. So the heavy-handed auto-tune was definitely something that we wanted. That was
and it wasn't as heavy. Like a lot of songs go way heavier with it, so it wasn't always slammed at 0 which is basically as
like
hard as it
Akon
goes. It
or-
wasn't Akon.
or Cher.
But it was kind of tastefully put in there. So like you definitely hear it on some of the notes, and you hear how tight that vocal, the tuning of the vocal is, and it kind of gives it that really like metallic sound too, which is perfect for in this particular arrangement. It just
And in some cases with auto-tune too, if and this is not meant to sound like that, if you're too accurate, like if you're too much of a singer, it doesn't do the thing that you like want it to do. You have to kind of like undersing it a little bit so it will correct things, and you get that like, so it's definitely, we did a couple passes where it was just not doing the kind of like correction at the level that I wanted it corrected. So Lane was like, well, just try and sing it like not as accurate. And I remember that it's always a weird thing to like back off things that because when you're a singer, you're trained to sing as accurately as you can. And with something like auto-tune, if you're doing that, it is sometimes a hindrance. So we did like, I don't even know how many times we re-recorded this because it just wasn't doing, I mean, 5 or 6 times I would say of the lead vocal, just because it wasn't doing
and then when
what
it was
I wanted.
done, we re-recorded it again.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. Even when we're like, yep, this is the one.
And you were like, I want to redo this
I
line,
want to
this line, this
yeah.
line.
Because it wasn't. That's so funny. I don't remember. I forgot about that. All right.
Feel the terror in the air.
This is also Eric Dale.
Someone up that's watching and you wanna scream, but only if you dare. Don't you
My all-time favorite, Elvira.
There's no one.
For those of you that don't know, that's Anna Ricks. She plays Sleeping Beauty. She's a million things.
In our
us.
videos, yeah.
She's the Wicked Witch of the West, the Oz Great and Powerful Wicked Witch of the. She's Yzma.
Cinderella.
She's Anna Kendrick, Cinderella, and If the Shoe Fit. Like she is like another kind of one like Leah Loman, where she's just, and Brianna Fogdett, where she's just a chameleon, and Rachel Copeland. Like we have a kind of a group of these girls that you just lose them in the part because they're so good at disappearing into character, and it's just like, as a director and a writer, it's like the best thing when you know that you just go like, I can cast this person and they're gonna nail it on the first take, and it's gonna be.
She's also able to pull out the voice and
Oh
some
my
of like
gosh, yeah.
the feel of her, like the feel of her voice and the pacing of her, the way
because
she speaks.
Elvira, the
impressive.
character too. We'll wait till like when we get closer to that, but that was like another whole thing of her learning how Elvira talks, because Elvira in and of herself is a character of Cassandra Peterson. So like it's very affected. She doesn't speak the way, hi Lane, how are you doing? You know what I mean? It's very heightened, like, hi Lane, how are you doing? Like it's very campy.
Mm-hmm.
So learning that is like, it can be difficult because it's very unnatural, but it also is like
That's her shtick.
synonymous with who she is.
Around and the sound makes your knees start to shake.
I know you're smiling, so tell them why you're smiling.
Okay, so the what's the name of the movie? The Nun is. I'm like the church. No, it's
What's
the
the
Nun.
name of the movie as
was
we're
so
staring
funny
at a
because-
screen grab of The Nun?
And it's Tony's favorite like horror movie of, I don't know if all time, but like recently.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
like anytime we hear any kind of stats about The Nun, he just like the new stats come out like, oh, Nun 2 came out and it's
number one
number
movie, yeah.
7 in the box office. He's like, guess what? So he's got a lot
I really
to say
love
about
that
the stats.
franchise too, because it's like, I consider it like elevated horror. I hate like Saw and like gore porn. Like I just like,
I love Saw.
I hate stuff like that, but I love horror as a genre, and this, the way it's lit and like the atmosphere that like of that movie in particular, like it felt very nostalgic of like a movie that could have been made in like the 50s. Even though it takes place in the movie in the 50s, it felt like extravagant, and you're watching it and you're like, this movie has like no right to be this like beautifully shot and lit, and like it's just like, I watched it in the movie theater and be like, look at this lighting, like look at this camera work, and it's just, I love that, and I love a good like ghost story, so I love The Nun.
We actually use a lot of The Nun as
From a lighting,
as
yeah, for
as a
Villains Lair.
reference for Villains Lair and for other things that we do, just because
It's so
the lighting
beautiful.
scheme is so pretty, and it's also got like colors that are very
Horror.
horror, but they're kind of muted too. They're like very like modern horror.
but it still feels classic, like in the same breath too. And that's what James Wan does so well. The director of The Nun, like he just takes classic kind of things and is really good at like putting a new coat of paint on them for like a modern generation.
The eyes are cool in this, though.
Oh, you're getting your eyes to go. And those are like these crazy contacts. And this was a Lane thing. Speaking of Lane, that is Lane puppeteering the gremlin.
This is my front door, and this is my hand in a giant.
So the cauldron is hollow, and we like laying down on the Lane is laying flat on the pavement, and he has his hand.
And my arm is through the cauldron, full of the candy
The
to go
cauldron
in
is
afterwards.
full of, yep. And then his
the
hand
gremlin.
is through the gremlin into the mouth. And then once he's set,
like
we filled the cauldron with candy. So he had to like burst up because we wanted it to look like the gremlin was like eating. Because for those of you that don't know the movie, they're not supposed to eat like after it gets dark.
They get bad.
This is what happens. They go from cute to bad. So we're like, I want him to look like he's rummaging through all this candy and like eating it. Mm-hmm. And so we had like, all of these things were really specific timings.
Oh yeah, it was, I think we did it like 5 or 6 times and made a giant like candy mess all over my front porch. I mean,
and it's
there
like
were months
90
after
degrees too
that I
during
still
this, and
found
the
like
candies.
mini Snickers
Right.
and like I don't even know.
I
It was
forgot
like Three
about that.
Musketeers.
Where I would like come to your house and I'd be like, you have Tootsie Rolls that are like in your shrubbery.
Like found another piece of
Because
candy.
we did it so many times and you just kept filling the candy up because he has to like burst and the
But
candy
every time
goes
he
everywhere.
pops out, like 18 pieces of candy pop out too. So that was fun.
And he's doing the voice too. That's Lane's voice.
So if you sit alone, won't you pick up the phone? 'Cause there's a stranger on the other side of things that go bump in the night. You hear a sound, go broken. Oh.
For those of you that are new to our channel, we love Hocus Pocus. We have a lot of Hocus Pocus content on this channel. And Kim, who plays Winifred, played it at Disney World, and she was, in my opinion, one of the best that I've ever seen. Not only does she look like her, but she
can sound just like her.
embodies her in a way that is just nuts. Jenica McCleary, who did our first couple Hocus Pocus videos too, who does, she has this cabaret show called Winnie's Rock Cauldron Cabaret, and she's another one that is just like, she is so brilliant in what she does with that character. So I love working with actors. It's like, especially actors like this, it's like a director and a writer's dream that just like, because when you write these things sonically or from a script standpoint, you go like, oh, I don't know if this works. And then you get on set and we're like, okay, I need you guys to start out in this bush and just like Three Stooges pop out. Like, we laughed so hard making that, like a lot of these, just because it's like, I hope it provokes the question of like, how did they get in there? Like, you know, like, why are they in this bush? Like, and it just like, hopefully, I don't know, and the fact that it's just like boop, 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 that they just pop out of nothing, and I just like, it was like Three Stooges, and it just was so funny to me.
We also in this, you'll probably notice in a lot of these shots, we couldn't bring a smoke machine with us because we had limited power. So we found these little smoke grenades.
These like bombs, yeah.
It's kind of like a firework.
I don't know if I can say that on YouTube.
And then you basically have like 30 to 40 seconds with smoke. And then
You, like, pull the
it's
stopper.
over. So it's like all of this coordination with like, all right, on 3, you guys are going to go. The camera's going to move left. You hold the light or maybe move it a little bit to the left right here. There's a
When the camera
ton
hits
of
this mark,
coordination.
when the camera hits this mark, that's when Winnie pops out. When the camera hits this mark, Sarah pops out. So everybody stays in focus in the time. It's like a shot like this was probably 4 hours.
It was substantial.
Like,
but obviously worth it.
oh, I still laugh when I watch.
Just for a second, it's too late, 'cause it's things that go bump in the night. Don't run and hide, 'cause you're safer inside. So lock the door.
Also, just to go back to talking a little bit more musically about this, the original demo of the song had different lyrics, and something.
Do they?
Yeah, and I don't remember what they were, and we got pretty far. I even think that we started shooting this with the old chorus lyrics, and we had to bring Ben and Stevie in again to do pickups because we changed some of the words. We tried to cut away from them for the parts that we changed, but there's a couple moments where we changed the chorus, the lyrics of the chorus, like up until the last second, and that's really how we work right up until like the last
the
second.
Song
We're
can
making
be
changes.
fully mixed and mastered, and we will go back in and still make edits. So typically, like when you, a lot of people that records are in the industry, when you record songs, it's like, okay, you record the vocals, you get the audio mixed, you send it off to mastering, you get it back, and it's like that's it. But like the way we work, it like we change things all the way up into the very last.
Even
minute.
the master too, like when it's mixed, we'll go in and tweak, and I go, oh, I listened to this in my car. Oh, I listened to this on my TV, and we'll do all of that. When we're doing rough cuts of stuff, or even final cuts, we'll
listen on different systems.
He'll listen on his phone. I'll listen in my car. I'll put it on my TV at home. So you're getting a real sense of what the mix sounds like on different devices. So we're constantly tweaking things, lyrics, mixes, synths, up until like the last minute. I know. Pennywise. That's me also.
Pennywise is Tony.
Yep.
This was a composite shot that we did. The actual sewer is a sewer from Tony's neighborhood.
Yep.
And then
that we put like this water light down into the actual sewer.
Yep.
True story.
It's real. And then
the feet that are walking in front are actually Lane's daughter, green screen.
Oh my God, that's right.
Because we couldn't get the timing right, and we knew that Pennywise would have to be composited, so we needed the feet to be
a separate layer,
a separate thing,
so we could time it out exactly right. So the feet walk by, and then Tony pops up, and Tony is obviously green screened also. And
but we had to flag the light. If you notice that there's like this shadow going across Pennywise's head that is simulating the kind of overhang of the sewer, sort of like that. So we had to flag this light so that when Pennywise pops up into camera, the lighting matches that there would be a shadow there because the light is really high above and he's at ground level. So there would be this really dramatic shadow like that.
But this is, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours of makeup hours of post-production and
I'm like blind as a bat.
Literally in the shot for 3 seconds.
3 seconds? Yeah. And it was probably 4 hours of makeup. Of just these pieces and the teeth and the eyes and the bulbous. There was like Rick Underwood, our amazing makeup artist, like figured out how they did it.
How did they? Did they stuff something in there? I forgot.
It was like this foam, like this like a couch foam that he carved to like exaggerate the forehead, and then he built this forehead that was like double the width or double the length. So it had this real bulbous top like it does in the movie. And we actually did it twice because the first time that we did it, the forehead was too big.
Oh my God.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
And we had to go through it like all again because that's like what perfectionists we are, is that we went through the 4 hours of makeup and all the prosthetics and shot it full day. That was what for this 3 seconds. And then we decided that it was like too big. There was something wrong with the proportion of the forehead, and we ended up doing a whole second day of all prosthetics, bring the makeup artist back in, just shoot the whole thing again, get the lighting all set up again, just for this quick little cameo because we like wanted it to be right.
Perfect.
So you better beware. There's things that go bump and will give you a scare.
And for those of you that don't know, I said we're children of the 80s. That little like vamp. I don't know if you guys catch it, but it's Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne. Or it's Ozzy Osbourne at that point, Black Sabbath. But it's another kind of one of those, like he's kind of like a horror adjacent especially of that time period, he like was biting heads off bats and stuff like that. So it was just another little like musically subtle nod that we put, and it's the bass line for the whole song.
It's the bass line for the entire song.
So every time we would do this, whenever we would get to this point in the dance, like right before the dance break where it cuts out and it's just the bass line and the heartbeat, we would do that every time. Ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. And we did it like, and we drove everybody crazy on set because we did it like every time because that's what it is. That's the riff.
Just a little bit of setup for this. This was a huge production to get all these dancers in one place.
And we shot this during COVID.
Night. This was during COVID, right during when it kind of started, like what, 4 months after it started?
Oh yeah, like right at the beginning of it.
Nobody was working at this point in time, so
because this came out for Halloween of 2020, but we shot it in the summer of 2020. So we shot this like 3 months before, maybe even more before Halloween. So we had to like dress the front of this house to look like Halloween, and people were like, what are you doing? Like it's like the middle of July, and like why am I seeing Halloween? We couldn't find hay bales, we couldn't find pumpkins because like it was a thing.
And this is also, we were trying to find like the most ubiquitous looking neighborhood we could find. Like what's the most 90s looking neighborhood you could find? And the house that I grew up in, which my parents don't live there anymore, they moved, but this house on Long Branch Road was like the perfect house. So we like,
I went and talked. It's a cul-de-sac.
It's a cul-de-sac. So I went and talked to my old neighbors, which was kind of weird, but also hilarious and fun. And I was like, hey, what do you guys think about allowing us to like shoot in front of your house? And they're like,
this like dance break.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I was like, well, we're going to also need your power, and your power.
And we had all this fog, all of these like lights, but we didn't want to overlight it because it still needs to feel like
the middle of the
natural night. Not like all of this light has to be coming from an actual source, whether it's street lights or the moon or somebody's porch lights. So we had to be really careful about how we lit it, that it felt natural too. But when you watch it too, you see how wide, like this obviously was a pickup shot. This was not in the same location as the dance break. Mm-hmm. But hopefully like when you watch it, you see like the next wide shot, how wide the street is. And you go like, well, that's clearly not a street. So hopefully you suspend your disbelief a little bit that you don't realize that the street is not that wide.
Most of the light was coming from behind just to keep that mystique going on.
And this was actually shot on a drone.
Oh yeah.
These ins and outs, there's a couple like drone above shots, but these, the ease of movement,
the ins and outs that you'll see, like the super wide were the drones.
And you got a real sense of like perspective.
We actually had a really tough time cutting this together because every shot looked so good and we didn't want to cut. So anyway, it's not typical for us to have all these options.
Our patrons saw, what was funny about this is that if you notice, we staged them all, especially when you see like the bird's eye view from above. We had to specifically stage them 6 feet apart. And like I said, we shot this during COVID, so all of the dance rehearsals that these dancers had was all via Zoom. Mm-hmm. So getting them on the street and giving them spatial awareness, and even the dancers that are in masks are still like masked like underneath it. So we made it a really huge conscious effort to like, you guys have to keep your spacing 6 feet apart. Mm-hmm. It was like, that was the biggest thing because these are all dancers that know each other. I know most of them. And they hadn't seen each other and they hadn't danced in months and months and months. So like the natural tendency was to like congregate. And we had to have all these makeup stations that were all in these tents outside and having people line up for whoever was next in the makeup chair. We were just constantly yelling. We're just like, stay 6 feet apart.
Yeah, they mostly did.
Oh yeah, no, but that was like a whole thing of the spacing for this is, how do we make them look 6 feet apart without making them look 6 feet apart? And these really low angles like this, like with the drone, give you a sense that they're closer together than they actually are. When you, like I said, when you see the bird's eye view, you'll see actually how spread out they are.
All right, let's go.
I.
And Lindsay Galvin Todd choreographed this, who is a choreographer dancer that I worked with for years here, and she is just
incredible.
And she choreographed a bunch of stuff for us, for clients. The chimney sweeps in the the great Disney showman. She's choreographed episode 5 of the Villains Lair season 2. So she is the choreographer that we go to very often because she's very easy to work with. She understands dancers. She understands acting through dance too. She understands like all of that, and she's a joy to work with. And like I said, we said thriller, but not thriller. So she came up with this dance that was reminiscent, but very much its own thing. And this is my favorite part, head. Like, I love that. You see here how actually spread out they are. And we put Slimer in there just to give him kind of another call out. Okay, this part, this
was suggested to us from our patrons. We were like, what are like some of the most iconic horror films you can think of? And
Halloween
and one
horror.
of them said The Shining, and we both were like,
and it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And
The Shining is a
Halloween movie? I mean, it is a horror movie, but I go like, Halloween?
But we were like, okay, cool.
Because this was originally supposed to be the Headless Horseman that was supposed to intercept them here and try and chop their heads off with his axe. We were doing the Burton, the Headless Horseman from Sleepy Hollow. But there was an issue with Jason, who is another wonderful actor that we work with, who is like a very, very, very skilled horseman. He races and he has horses. He breeds them, and he's just a treasure of a human being too. But he couldn't do it on the nights that we knew. Everything had to be scheduled so tightly for this thing because it's COVID, and we couldn't have more than a certain amount of people per night to give the makeup art. Like, it was just a lot of things. So we said it has to be this night, and he couldn't do it. So we said, okay,
what can we do instead? And
we got just inundated by people like, oh, where's Jack from The Shining? And even though I'm a mammoth fan of the movie, it's like I said, it's probably my favorite horror movie is The Shining. I didn't associate it with like Halloween.
Oh, yeah. Me either, but now that it's in here, it fits perfectly.
And most people that watch it go, "Oh my God, Jack Nicholson!" So it's one of those things. Sean Philbin, who's playing Jack Torrance here, is another one. He was a Dracula and a Wolfman, and I want to say a Frankenstein too at Universal. So he's another just like great actor, great singer, great mover. Like, he's just another one of these just like really well-rounded people to work with and cast. So it happens to look enough here and here like Jack Nicholson. He obviously has a full head of hair, and it's like we gave him this bald cap, and then Jack Nicholson's like receding hairline. So even that had like a ton of makeup, and where like the bloody scar that he has from when Wendy hits him, we decided at what point of The Shining do we want Jack? You know what I mean? So it was a lot of the sourcing the sweater, sourcing the plaid, all of that, and the axe too. It's like a very specific, all of those details. It's like just pausing the movie and being like, what kind of axe is that? Or is that a tweed sweater? Is that what kind of jacket is that? What's the plaid pattern? All trying to get it as like
Screen
as close
accurate
as you can.
One other thing that we kind of breezed over was their reaction right at first on the dance break.
Oh, the Hitchcock?
Yeah, the Hitchcock zoom, which is kind of like a old technique, but it's where the camera is zooming out, but it's moving in at the same time. So like the subject kind of stays the same, but the background gets morphed, and it's got a really unsettling feel to it.
It's most famously used not by Hitchcock. It's in Spielberg. It's in Jaws.
That's right.
That's where it's like probably the most famously used. But it's they use it a lot of times, or they don't really do it anymore because it's kind of cliche at this point, but they use it for like
that's why we did it.
Like a realization moment.
When you're like, oh crap.
Like in Jaws, they use it when Roy Schneider realizes that the boy is out in the ocean, that it's actually a shark that's eating him, and you have this moment of like, oh my God. And that's when they used it. So we wanted to give it this kind of nod to that classic.
As you'll notice, this is another green screen moment where we were able to tweak it in post to make it look like that, to give that effect.
Even a touch more exaggerated than...
All right.
So if you're sitting alone, don't you pick up the phone, 'cause there's a stranger on the other side.
Oh, I love that shot.
If you hear a sound, go poking around just from
And this too was neat. Lane and I are like
Huge Stranger Things
fans of Stranger Things. Like I said, we're children of the 80s, so all of anything like that where it's like you're like, oh my god, I had that, or oh my god, my living room looked like that, or I went to an arcade. I went to a roller skating rink just like that. Like it's
the mall, the roller skating rink, like just everything about Stranger Things is like our childhood. So it's
aside from the fact that it's just so well written and acted, and we love the Demogorgon, so we wanted to just cram as many like horror Halloween icons, and we thought that was like a cool place to put the Demogorgon.
Definitely.
This kind of back and forth between the upside down and
a fun
reality.
little effect to play around with.
And now the little girl is finally actually feels that there's danger. It wasn't until the dance break that her because she's kind of like,
yeah, right.
Stop. Okay, this is enough. Like he's baiting her the whole time, wanting her to take the bait. And it's not until he turns around and sees that they've been following him this whole time that they both have this moment of actual fear. Because even when you watch these movies, it's just Michael Myers that's chasing them. It's just, Jason Voorhees. But to have all of them in this kind of like army of mass murderers staring at you and realize that they've been following you this whole time was cool, because it's like you need to instill fear in this kind of naysayer, and what is going to do that? One is not going to do it. Two is not going to do it. They need to all be there.
I don't know. I think one guy with an axe would have done it for me.
Jack Torrance from The Shining, like no way.
Get me out of here.
No way. And so he has to fall, and because it's the rule, and it's sort of the thing we set up where some dumb blonde, it's always the dumb blonde that falls and
gets killed first.
So we deliberately wanted it to be the guy who falls and almost doesn't make it, and it's the girl who goes back that saves him. So that was a deliberate choice from a writing standpoint to like reverse the stereotype a little bit.
Definitely.
That's lame. And the hands too is lame.
And now that they're in their house, they are safe.
At least that's the rule of like 80s kind of tropey things that like, okay, we just had to make it home with their glass front door.
Yeah, home base.
Right. Originally, I think at one point that was the end. And Elvira felt like the most kind of like, thanks for playing along, guy. Like she felt like
nobody else really could do that kind of sentiment
of like, hey, sorry, I know we've probably freaked you out, but
we were just joking around.
This is what we do, so thank you. So she felt like the right person to like, but they wouldn't open the door for anybody else, but they might for Elvira, especially Brad.
Brad.
He's playing a teenage kid, and I don't have to explain to you why a teenage boy would be attracted to Elvira.
Auga.
Or even a gay man that's attracted to Elvira. I still love her. So we wanted it to be, and she has all of these like jokes too, these like really kind of like bump jokes that, I don't know, they still work to me, so it had to be Elvira. And we wanted to like explain to the audience that they themselves were messing with, they weren't actually serious.
They weren't there to kill them, which was a nice little
They were
twist.
bummed too for lockdown that they had nobody to like scare.
Yeah. It really just was the neighborhood screwing with them.
Sorry about that back there. My friends and I just got a little carried away.
And that's Carrie.
We just wanted to say
the
thank
horror
you.
Movie Carried.
You're friends.
I know! With friends like them, who needs enemies?
Thank us for what?
For coming out this Halloween. With everyone staying inside this year, we thought this Halloween was gonna be a big bust. Eyes up here, Brad. As my way of saying thanks, I got you kids a little something.
So when James Keaton and I, the guy who plays Fester, and my writing partner, my script writing partner for a lot of this, we wanted to put as many kind of like Elvira-y tropes in it. So in order to like, it's Halloween, they're not trick-or-treating, so it's like, oh, she's got to give them something. I'm like, she's going to give the little kid, we came up with the lollipop from Trick or Treat, that was like, oh, that's cool. Because we couldn't put him in it, so we were just like, oh, let's put the lollipop in it. Again, just like trying to include as many kind of
little tiny little cameos
tiny
from
little
all
things
these
like that.
different horror films.
And we're like, okay, well, he's older. He's like, I know we made the joke that you're never too old to go trick-or-treating, but like, what's she gonna give him? And James says to me, he goes like, well, why doesn't she like give him a Playboy? And I was like, that's a great idea, because that's very Cassandra Peterson. That's Elvira's humor, is that she's the first one to like make a joke about it. But also Elvira, the character, is very ditzy, and she gets a lot of things. She says and does a lot of things that kind of go over her head. Like, I believe that Elvira thinks that people do love it for the articles. Like, I think she believes that. So They do, right. And any kind of like red-blooded American man would say, yeah, I read Playboy for the articles. I mean, Playboy's not really a thing anymore, but back in the day, like that was the thing. You had Playboy and you would like hide it. So I'm like, oh, let's give him a Playboy, but we didn't want to call it Playboy, so we called it Playghoul. And that was just another little fun detail that maybe nobody noticed, but and all of the, and
we printed that magazine.
A little treat.
So yeah.
And a little trick.
And hottest top, like that, it's not a real cover. We had this made. The Ultimate Elvira Pictorial, Recharge with the Bride of Frankenstein, Miss October, Revamp Your Coffin. So it was all kind of like a horror-based
punchlines or
yes,
titles.
And they're things that maybe you don't even notice, but they made us laugh. And that's actually Cassandra Peterson. That's not Anna Ricks, who looks so much like...
You can see the similarities.
Oh, yeah. And it's just like she's on set and you're like staring at her and you're just like, I can't get over how much you look like her. And not only that, we talked about the voice a little bit. She was like, she goes, oh my God, I've just listened to her interviews in the movie, and like her, because Elvira had a TV show that's kind of what made her famous. And she had this kind of like midnight movie club thing where she would show bad movies and like commentate on them and kind of like tear them apart and say how bad they were. That was like her shtick. So like there's a lot of footage of Elvira like talking. So she was just like listening to the cadence, because Elvira, like we talked about before, is a character. Cassandra Peterson plays Elvira. Mm-hmm. So it's like a very affected way of, with everyone staying inside this year, we thought this Halloween was gonna be a big bust. Like it's just like very campy.
Another thing you'll notice that in a lot of our videos, sometimes we have two different people. Like one person is the actor and the other person is the voice. Just to try to get it as close as possible to the original. Mm-hmm. So it's not always like the case when somebody can actually do the voice and be the actor. So it's really cool when that happens. And
she just like we were so impressed. She understood what the kind of comedy mm-hmm. that Elvira has, and she just I took more pictures of me with Anna Ricks that night than I have ever on any shoot ever. I was just like, I need another picture with you as Elvira, like, because I just love Elvira so much. She's so much a part of like my growing up with loving horror and stuff like that. So like, and again, giving her this little kind of special shout out at the end was like just very cool.
People love it for the articles. Well, all right, kids. Until next time, unpleasant Halloween.
And then she just disappears.
Back into the mist. And do you want to talk about that?
No, I think you want to talk about that.
So that's not how it ended originally. And it was supposed to... I don't even remember how it ended.
It was just like...
It was, the Elvira theme that just kind of like carried out. Like it just... And I was like... It doesn't feel...
80s.
Campy. It doesn't feel like cheesy. And I was like, oh, bring the bring the bup, 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 where you think the song is starting again, but it's just a button, like a musical button. And he was like,
I was like, this is way too cheesy.
we're not doing that. And I was like, bum, 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 ba-da. And then blackout. And he was just like, we're not doing that.
Yep.
I'm like, no, it's like a sitcom, like a episode of Goosebumps, or like, or Are You Afraid of the Dark? It was like, they all kind of had like musical buttons.
Yeah, there's like a horn section, like playing them out.
Yeah, and I was like, that's how I want to end it. And you were like, no.
We did.
And eventually we put it in and he goes,
wait,
okay.
Didn't we also put in the theme song after this, right?
Well, so there's an ad read that happens, and when we had an opportunity for this project in particular to like get really creative with the ad read, just because the subject was watching TV.
Yeah.
So we're like, oh my God, let's make this an infomercial for it that's all themed to like horror.
But it's also an infomercial straight from the 80s, and in the 80s and 90s and even early 2000s, they had all these commercials that were basically like the worst case scenario of the thing that you're trying to sell, like something that could never happen. Like you're holding your wallet and all the money just dumps out. Aren't you sick and tired of this?
It's like, that doesn't happen, but we like over at like, my wallet doesn't fit in my pocket. Ugh! Like it was just, we wanted it to feel.
Wallet comes with a lifetime warranty.
And even the
That's
VO,
right,
it's just
so
like
durable
nobody
you can
is that
carry it
excited
with
about
you
anything.
Your entire life. And
all these like
into the
really cheesy
afterlife.
transitions,
But wait, there's
like
more.
with the
For a
flashing,
limited time,
like
get
we
10% off your
we
order
wanted
with
it to feel like a
worldwide
commercial
shipping
from
and
the
returns
80s.
absolutely free.
With the-
Nothing
yeah.
dead with Ridge Wallet today.
and this little.
That's Tony's hand.
That is my.
Ridge Wallet is not responsible for any murders, kidnappings, or psychopathic tendencies.
So good.
And we wanted to put it like, is it over? So we wanted to give it another little like.
Hello.
Who's this?
Do you like scary movies?
And he's been there the whole time. So that was just another little like. And musically, when you listen to the song too, just to go back musically for a second, those like drum fills that like in the 80s and in 80s pop, it was like you had to have a drum fill that lasted like 4 bars. Like you had to have coo, 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 coo. Coo, 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 coo. Like it was just like the longest drum fills. And when we had this, I don't even remember, what is the Neon Dreams or something? Like what's the synth pack or like the,
Oh yeah, it's something like very nostalgic,
like 80s, and it has all of these like
80s synthesizers,
toms and hats and like it just like, and we're just listening to it.
But when Tony was like, "Oh, dude, let's add in like this 4-bar
drum fill,"
and I was like, "Okay, I know which sound to use." I was like, "I'm gonna go find. I know exactly which one." It's something. It's just, I don't know, sitting in this pack of 80s
period
things
too.
that we could never use for anything else because they're so 80s.
But that's what, like, we love to get to play with like genres like that, and we did that with Oogie Boogie too, the Oogie Boogie song that we wrote. That it's like this 70s kind of like disco
party
song that we just had. Oh my God. Maybe we'll do that one for another one too, but I think that is going to wrap it up for this
let
episode.
us know if you guys like this. If you want to see another one, let us know what song you want to see.
This is definitely one of, I can't speak for Lane, but this is definitely in my top 3 favorite videos, songs that
because I was in most of it. That's
definitely,
why.
that's why.
Yeah. All right, thank you guys for joining us.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.